Hi, welcome to our show, Umbrellas of Hope. We are committed to enrich the life of members of the veteran and military community by connecting them to the resources that they need. We advocate for professional and entrepreneurial opportunities and facilitate conversations of hope, empowerment, and creativity to reduce military and civilian transition difficulties and to help our veteran and entrepreneurs families to thrive. Hi, I'm Yorka, your host. We invite you to be part of this journey as we, together, bring a positive change on new beginnings, opportunity, and success. Our new mini series will be introducing the art of business to share with you how it can enhance your life, your community, and your future. So stay tuned. Please, please welcome Natalie Alcantara, a strategist, a coach, and the chief inspirer of Ion Marketing. Yes, she's here to inspire you about the power of storytelling in order to build brand resonance, fuel connections, and drive positive outcomes. So stay tuned.
Hello, and welcome to Story Branding, the art of creating real connection in today's virtual space, the virtual world as it is. And so, what I would love us to look at today is the power of story. And when we think of story, we think of, oh, I don't know if I have a story. Is this a new marketing? Is this a new marketing thing or this storytelling? But the truth is, we all have a story. We all have a story inside of us, and we all have a story that's worth sharing with others to build connections, to connect meaningfully, and to communicate our ideas, our thoughts, our gifts, our solutions, and just what we have to offer in the world. A lot has changed in the world over the last, almost 2 years now. And our now more connected reality demands so much more of our attention as we experience what I call the daily overdose of information. And we know what it's like. It's whether we're getting information coming to us on our phones, on our screens. We're all in an overwhelm and in an overdose of information. And so the one thing we have to ask ourselves is, how do we capture the attention of those that we serve? How do we, what I call, stop the scroll? And I'll tell you, there's one thing that has not changed, even though our world has changed. There's one thing that has not changed, and that's the universal appeal of a good story. Storytelling is not just for kids, folks. It's one of the most artful and effective methods for creating communication. Not to mention, storytelling has been around for maybe more than 2,500 years. I mean, this is the technique that even Aristotle used. And so when we think of change and how challenging change has been in our world, we think of how we communicate and connect with those who matter to us and how we want to create that communication. How do we want to begin those conversations and get them started? It becomes even trickier because now, more than ever, it's more difficult to get the attention of those who we serve. So there's an easy way, I always say, and it's a simple way, but it's an easy way to show up and stand out more authentically. And I would say it's called the art and soul of storytelling, or we call it story branding. And story branding isn't just, as I said, it's not just one of the latest marketing trends. Neuroscience proves to us that our brains are wired for stories. We are in a constant state of absorbing information that we can relate to. And so we are wired for stories. And with the influx of information coming at us today, we spend quite a lot of time deciding, well, what information am I going to choose to tune into or not? What's going to actually help me to survive or to thrive? So we spend a lot of time cognitively deciding whether we're going to tune in and listen to something or not. And that's where story comes in. We miss a lot of the messaging. And you know what? Clients miss a lot of the targets when they are ineffective in communicating their messages. It's simply because our brains can't cope with everything that's coming to us. We select what we want to hear. And so we tend to move on quickly when we're hearing things that sound the same or that talk about the features and the cost and the price. It's too much for us to assimilate. So we push it all the way down. And there's a lot of high cost, big budgets are being spent on developing this material and this messaging, but very little of it is actually assimilated. And this is where story changes. And this is where story comes in. So I'd love to share with you. I'm going to share my screen as we get into a little more about the power of story branding. And Donald Miller, who is one of the foremost experts on how to tell stories, he says something different happens when we hear a story. He tells us that the human brain is drawn towards clarity and drawn away from confusion. So our brain on story actually does something completely different. When we listen to a story, the neurochemical called oxytocin is released into our bodies. So in a sense, we have a physiological response to stories. Listening to a story allows us to unconsciously produce a certain response that can't be produced otherwise. Oxytocin, I'm sure you may have heard about this powerful peptide before. Well, yep, you're absolutely right. Oxytocin is a peptide that changes the way we react as listeners, and it also changes our natural response mechanisms. So when information is organized into story form, what happens is the brain doesn't have to work as hard. It doesn't have to try to figure out, is this something I should be intaking? Is this something that's going to help me thrive or survive? We actually just lean in and listen. There is what I call an efficiency of intake. The simpler and the more predictable your message, the easier it is for the brain to digest. So it's why stories sometimes are absolutely so simple. We don't have to get complicated. We don't have to use a lot of words. We simply have to put it in a simpler context to allow our brain the efficiency to uptake what we're hearing. Stories put everything in order. Many times a good analogy can tell a story, a story, or something that describes a situation actually gives much more information than just specific facts standing on their own. When stories put things in order, what that does for us is it allows the brain to figure out what comes next. So we can move directly from that efficiency of uptake in information to then the most important part, taking action. Let's look at this powerful peptide as we talk about oxytocin. And what is oxytocin? Well, here are some of the effects of this powerful peptide. It's known as the love chemical. It helps us to build bonds. So for any of you who are moms out there, you would know that this is actually the chemical your body produces right after you have that baby to help to create that bond between you and your child. This love chemical elicits a sense of empathy and cooperation in the listener. So we don't have to even pretend or even intend for this to happen. It naturally happens. Oxytocin enhances our experience with our emotions and the emotions of others, and it motivates positive reciprocal behavior. Most important of all, that's what creates the next step when your customer wants to take action. I love to show this slide because this slide says quite a lot. It says, I call it the story effect. And the story effect on the left-hand side of my screen shows what happens when you have good stories, when you have good characters, when you have good examples, when your narrative shows a trajectory of what happened, how something was solved, how a problem was solved. It shows what the struggle could have been like. And what did we see on the left-hand side is that it's the city of the brain being awakened as we wake up to all these different elements that bring that story alive to us and awaken those emotions. If you look on the right-hand side, if we were just simply talking about products, features, benefits, and targets, not so much the same, right? Yeah, because talking about one-dimensional products, features, benefits, and targets only light up certain specific parts of the brain. And you may see that kind of light turquoise area. So it's very fixed in specific points as compared to the left-hand side where the city of the brain becomes alive. Stories awaken us and stories bring us alive. It's why it's so important to share your story when you want to connect your customers to your brand. And here's why story works. Again, I'll reiterate, the human brain is drawn to clarity and drawn away from confusion. When information is organized in a story, the brain doesn't need to work as hard. As I said, there's efficiency of intake. The simpler and more predictable your message, it's the easier for the brain to digest. It's almost like when we're eating. If we eat simple foods, if we intake liquids, it's a much easier digestion process than if we have solids. Stories put everything in order. Again, stories mean it's less work for our brain to figure out what comes next. You know, we all think of stories being, well, I don't know if I have a story, or perhaps we all have stories, but maybe these stories are outdated. And times have changed, the world has changed. But, let's ask the question, have we looked at our stories? Have our stories in themselves changed? And how do we begin to create a new narrative for the stories we want to share? This next slide, I love this particular technique, and I love it because it's a technique that I learned from David Hutchins, and he says there are 3 types of stories to tell in uncertain times. There are stories of continuity. How have I endured? How have you endured during the last 2 years? What's your identity? What values and what guiding principles did you have to hold on to take you through this period? You can tell a story all about your continuity. And so when we think about sharing more about our brands, we've just come through, and for some of us, we're still coming through that tunnel towards the light. And we are still here. How are we sharing a little bit about our journey in the stories that we are telling? There's stories also of novelty. For many of us, we had to do a lot of stuff that's completely new. We had to focus on innovation, but more so we had to look through a lens of possibility. And so when we think of stories to tell in uncertain times, what are the new things that we've done? What are the new ways that we have actually, new things we've tried, new solutions, new offerings? What have we done new, or what have we enhanced? And I love the question, what have we made possible? There are also stories of transition. Well, as I said before, a lot has changed. And so when we dive into transformation and new learnings, we can actually share a lot about stories of transition. What has changed for us? How are we doing something differently? How has our brand actually up-leveled to meet the needs and the demands of today's world? And so 3 easy ways, and these are my 3 favorite ways to be able to share a new story. Each and every one of you out there, I know we've been through 2 years of a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty, but each and every one of you out there, I know have a story that falls into one of these 3 categories. It's the easiest way for you to begin to retell a new story and to create a new narrative. And I love to share from this perspective. David Hutchins says, these are stories that we tell in uncertain times. But the truth is anything in life certain? No. We are always living in an uncertain world. And so when we learn that our stories are not static, we don't have to have just one brand story. We can have several. We can tell stories about the trajectory of our evolving brands, of our own business evolution. We can constantly tell stories to connect and share what we are doing and how we serve our customers. So, stories that tell in uncertain times, hey, we live in uncertain times. We can tell these stories at any time. The story doesn't have to be just one story, and your story doesn't have to be a static story. It can actually be a dynamic story that continues to inform and excite your customers as you engage them through your own business growth. I love that the most. You know, when I think of what my story is, and I invite you to take a moment and think of your own story. Think of what your story has been like before the pandemic, and even during, and even now, because we're still going through so much in the world. What is your story? How has your brand changed? How has your business changed? What did you hold on to make sure that even if everything else in the world changed, these were values that you kept close to you and you used to guide you on your way on your path forward? Those same values are the values that you are integrating into the way you put your business forward into the world today. And so simply sharing what matters most to you, in essence, is sharing your story. For me, my story is one of taking my business from being completely in person to now being completely online. A big change. I used to love to shop in person in the offices of clients, to be able to interact one-to-one and face-to-face. That's now coming back a bit. But the truth is, for the last 2-year period, really, it was a matter of interacting online. And so I had to learn how to create excitement and engagement and to be able to translate a lot of my personality, which is a very energetic personality, in an online virtual space. My story was one of learning and discovering, and learning just what meaningful connection is like in an online space. Think of your own stories. Take a moment to just think of a story you would love to tell. Maybe your business has changed. For many of you, you may have had to do a pivot. Some may have had to do a reinvention. Some may have had to just cut off what you're doing altogether and start something new. Regardless of what space you're in, you have a story to tell. It's time to think of how you can begin to tell it. Stories connect us. When you are able to share that point that you started, reinvented, pivoted, when you're able to connect and you dig deep and you uncover and unearth that why, that meaningful why has a force of passion. And that's what you're sharing. That's the energy that you're putting forth into the world. So go back, dig deep, think of your why. Begin to share your story in a special, meaningful way to those who you know need to hear it. It's why you're doing what you're doing. When we hear a good story, there's always what I call the after effects of the story. And here's how you know when you hear a good story. And I love this phrase. It goes, your audience may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Emotions drive our purchases far more than logic. How many times have you seen something or bought something because of the way it made you feel? And so feelings drive a lot of the reasons why we decide to commit, we decide to buy, we decide to take action. And so when we hear a good story, it makes us feel a particular way. And so if you want to drive customers, consumers to use your brand, to interact with you, using story is one of the most amazing ways to be able to get that client, to get those customers to feel what it is you may have felt, that passion that you are feeling inside when it comes to what you're doing and how you serve and how you show up in the world with what solution you have to offer. You know, people say, oh my gosh, but how do I come up with what do I want people to feel in the end? And I say, start with the end result in mind. What does that mean? Well, there are a couple of questions you can ask yourself. First, what do you want to be remembered for? What would you love your clients to remember you for? And also, what messages do you want to share? Maybe they're messages that you learned. Maybe it's why you're so committed to doing what you're doing. What messages do you want to share? Write those down. Maybe take a snapshot of this slide so that it's something that you can use as you are developing your story. Take out your phones, take a snapshot of this one. These are great questions that you should be asking yourself as you design a story that you want people to be able to feel good after they hear. The last thing is, I'd say, what emotion do you want to evoke in your audience every time they interact with you or your brand? If you don't know the emotion, you're not going to know how you want to make them feel, right? So the key is for you to identify, what emotion do I want my audience, my clients, my customers to feel when they interact with me? Do I want them to feel satisfied? Do I want them to feel happy? Do I want them to feel relieved? What do I want them to feel? Do I want them to feel grateful? I mean, there's a plethora of emotions. Identify what are the key emotions you want your clients to feel. And that's the emotion that you want your story to elicit when you share it. Stories build brand love. Absolutely, yes. If you want people to fall in love with your brand, if you want to build brand advocacy, storytelling is the best way to share. It's the best way to tell people who you are and why you do what you do. And building brand love in today's world is about building that advocacy, the ability for people to say, yes, I believe in this brand. Why should they believe in you? Just because you have one feature more than someone else? How about if they believe in you because of a story that you shared about why you started your business? Perhaps they believe in you because of a story that you shared because of how you endured and up-leveled your business. Perhaps they believe in you because you shared a story about creating and filling a need and creating a solution in a time when your customer needed it most. Maybe you observed something in the market that no one else did. Maybe you experienced something in the market and said, hey, I'm going to fix this. Whatever it is, your story matters, and your story matters to someone. And so identifying what it is, your why am I doing what I'm doing? How has that changed? Sharing that story about your brand actually helps to build that brand love. And I'll stop right here and I'll say, I'm going to ask you, well, what is it that's stopping you from sharing your story? Is it because you feel you don't have a story? I've just said to you, we all have a story. We're containers for story. Our lives are filled with stories. Who doesn't have a story about their life? We all have stories about the journey of life. We all have stories about even the journey of our business, how we got started, why we got started, what do we want to solve, for who, when. There's so many stories. We are containers for story. I'm inviting you to open that container and let some of your stories out. Let some of your light shine in the world, shine onto the world so that you can infuse your customers, your target audience with the message that you have to share. Ask yourself, what's stopping you from sharing your story? And I know for many of you, it's because you feel that you don't have a story maybe that's good enough. Well, why are you doing what you're doing? You're doing it because it's good enough for you. You found a solution or you found something that's good enough to solve a problem for someone else. Hey, that's good enough. And that's the story to begin sharing. I'd love us to, as we wrap up towards the end of this presentation and we think of story, I want you to consider the fact that people want to join a great story. If you want to lead, tell one with your own life. Tell a story, tell a big story, and invite others to share their stories, their little stories inside of your big stories. It's actually where we get testimonials from. We get testimonials because people buy into what we sell and they have a great experience and they're willing to share their stories. What about if we're willing to share a story first? I invite you to look at story branding and storytelling through a whole new lens. We are containers for story. Invite your customers, your clients, your audience into a story that you have. Thank you. I'm Natalie Alcantara. You can find me at Natalie Ion Marketing on Instagram. My business is ionmarketingltd.com. It's www.ionmarketingltd.com. Or hey, link me on LinkedIn. I am Natalie Alcantara, Ion Marketing Ltd.
Hello, amazing viewers. Your support is invaluable. Your like, shares, and engagement have channel into a vibrant community, and we're deeply grateful. Thank you. If you have been enjoying our content and want to see more, there's a simple way to support us. Hit that big red subscribe button below this video. Subscribing not only keeps you updated on our latest release, but also show you appreciation for what we do. And some exciting news. Our next promo, it reveals fantastic products we have crafted with you in mind. From exclusive merchandise to cutting edge tools, we got it all. By purchasing a product, you become a part of our mission to deliver valuable content and take this community to new heights. Every purchase helps us invest in better equipment, expand our team, and explore new possibilities. These products are just things that you own. They are a symbol of your support and love for what we do. So stay tuned for the next video. Check the links below and grab what catches your eyes. Let's embark on this journey together. Thank you for inspiring us. You turn this channel into a community, not just a platform. Hi, I'm Nyorka. Thank you for watching my content.
Ask yourself, how do you show up every day? Over the next few minutes, I'm going to take the time and I'm going to share 3 tips with you for you to consider, for you to implement in your life.
I hope you have and will continue to enjoy this journey and creativity with us. In today's world, where artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, advancing science, and autonomous vehicles is our new normal, creativity has never been more important. This new mini-series of By Umbrellas of Hope was created in order to inspire you and empower you by giving you the creative confidence to redesign the world around you, to create new solutions that are invaluable for today's society, powered by your vision, your own unique talents, and limited only by your imagination. Our world, our society, our future needs you.